Hey everybody, this is Vincent again, and I am working on the third video. This will be my third video for my channel on my journey outside of the Watchtower Society. So today, the title is, Do I Hate Jehovah's Witnesses? Now, I just have to say this first. Usually at the end of these videos, I will say, well, in my next video, we're going to talk about this and that. Well, don't listen to that guy because that guy has ADD. I may think I'm going to talk about those subjects, but when I come back in front of the camera here, I have something else I want to share because there's just so much to say. And sometimes I think you need to hear this first before we talk about that. So today we're going to talk about, do I hate Jehovah's Witnesses? Now, it's important to talk about this because in the Watchtower Society, if you're totally indoctrinated like I was, the way the Watchtower Society talks about those people that leave the Watchtower, they call them apostates. And they try to say that these people hate God and they hate God's people. And so when you leave the organization, especially the way I did, they really believe or give the impression that this guy hates God, hates his people. In fact, and you will understand this if you're a witness or a former witness or thinking about leaving the organization, and that is they almost view apostates as Satanists. I mean, they actually create an atmosphere of fear. I mean, like if someone comes around me, a lot of witnesses, they just scatter. They scatter like, like bugs everywhere. And it's because they have a fear of you. A lot of them think you actually became a Satanist. I mean, it is just absolutely ridiculousness at the highest level. But that is the view they want to give their people, so that their people will avoid people like myself and not be influenced by people like me, because they are so afraid that they're going to lose membership from that religion. And that's really the way it is. So what happens is the organization teaches their people that people like myself hate people and they hate, God. But is that true? No, not at all. In fact, especially if you become a follower of Christ, you actually become so much of a better person, and your view of people completely changes. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Do you hate the Watchtower? Well, of course you hate the Watchtower Society. But what is the Watchtower Society? It's nothing but a corporation. And the word corporation comes from the word corpse. There's nothing living about it. It has no life in itself. So yes, I hate the Watchtower. I hate its teachings. I hate the way it treats its people. But we're talking about a corpse there. As far as the people go, no, most ex-witnesses like myself do not hate the people. In fact, like I said, you've become a better person, and you actually really begin to feel for these people. In fact, you sometimes feel that you wish you can go back and just spend some time with these people and help them in their lives. Okay, so now if you live in the Lewis-Clark Valley, what I'm about to say is not negative about the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley in Washington and Idaho area there. I was raised there most of my life, but my childhood was not good. I had a dark childhood, and you combine that with being a Jehovah's Witness, and then it just makes things worse as far as, it was a very depressing time. So when I go back to that area, to the Lewis-Clark Valley, I have different feelings about that place. Now, when I see people online, I see my classmates, I see former friends of mine, they're all happy in the valley. Actually, I envy those people, and I'm so glad they're happy. They have moved on with life. They love life, and everything's great. For me, it's a little bit different. So when I go into the valley, I think of childhood. Now, this is when I'm going to become sort of a philosopher here. When I was a child and a teenager, I would take my bicycle, and I would be, I'd take that bicycle, and my brothers would do the same thing. We'd ride along the Snake River, on the bike trail there, and you know, as a kid, even when I was little, I was a little bit strange, I think, but I would hear the sound of the rocks. I'd hear the sound of the water hitting the rocks. I would smell that, that smell of, smells like fish or whatever. You'd smell that water. I would look across the valley and I would see this junkyard that had been there since I was little. I would look at that grove of trees and I would think to myself, who thinks about those trees? Those trees have been there probably for 100 years. Well, now I go back and I think about those things, and what do I think about now? I think about that water. It's hitting the same rocks that I seen when I was little. The junkyard is still there. That grove of trees is still there. Time has moved on, but so much has not changed. And for me, that thought is very depressing. Not because of the valley itself, but because when I see those things, I think of all of the Jehovah's Witnesses that I grew up with in that valley. There were a lot of ones that were older than me. I was little, I was like 5 years old, and they were like 25 years old, and they were like, they were becoming elders and all of this in the congregation where I came from. And when I go back to the valley, I know ones that are still there. Their life has not changed one bit. Time has moved on, but they have been trapped in time. They are still going to those meetings. They are still knocking on doors. Nothing has changed. Their lives are like the sound of that water hitting those rocks. They are like that grove of trees that has not changed. And like that grove of trees, most people don't think about them. I was a little bit weird to think that way, but no one thinks about that grove of trees that was there 100 years. Very few people probably think the way I think about things, and that's the way the witnesses are. Nobody thinks about them. Life has moved on, and they have been left in the dust. And now they're ready to go into the grave, but nothing has changed for them. That really saddens me, and I get so depressed. That's why I get depressed when I go back. I think of people like that. I really pity them because I look at my life. Not only did I leave the valley, and by the way, again, I'm not telling people that live over there and that are happy to leave the valley, but I needed to leave because my life was not good. So as soon as I had a chance to leave, I was out. And my life has changed so much. It has become so much better since I have left the Watchtower Society. I have moved on with life. I'm doing the things I want to do. I'm free to think the way I want. Like I said, I'm a follower of Christ, but even when I read the Bible, nobody tells me what to think and how to feel when I read that. It's such a good feeling. And so I really pity and I feel sorry for these ones that are still within the organization. Then you have people that, when you are a witness, because you are in this matrix, and yes, it is a matrix, like literally it is your entire life. And so that's why when you wake up, you're literally under a spell in this matrix. You think this is really the way the world operates, and it doesn't. So when you wake up, you're just shocked, right? Your whole matrix is unraveled. Okay. So, but when you're in there are people that you just don't like. As an elder, there were certain elders, man, I couldn't stand them. They were like, in my mind, the worst of the human race because they were hypocrites. They were mean. They didn't treat people well in the congregation, and that's the way it's always been since I was a child. In fact, this is funny, and I'm not bragging about me or my character or anything like this, but everyone knew me as a very strong Jehovah's Witness who loved God, and I wanted to treat people well, and I wanted to do things as a witness. But I'm going to tell you this right now: you can only be so good as a Jehovah's Witness, no matter who you are at heart. You're not really allowed to be the kind of person that you really are inside. But I would have these older women come to me when I was 18 and say, "Hey, Vincent, you got to become an elder so you can straighten out these elders here because they just aren't doing what they should be doing." And so when you where am I going with this thought? I'm trying to remember where I wanted to go with this thought. So, I know what I was saying. So you really, you really care for people, and you may be a caring person, and so there are people within the organization that you really dislike because for those reasons, that they're not treating people well. And if you're a sincere person that loves people, that's really going to bother you. And so what happens is as time goes on, you really start to dislike these people completely. You want nothing to do with them. You may become angry with them. However, when you leave the organization, you begin to view those people differently. In fact, there was one elder, I just thought he was the worst elder I've ever seen. In fact, if you knew his last name, you'd say, whoa, he really lives up to that name. But today I look at him and I'm like, if I went back, I like that guy. I really like that guy. You know why? Because now I look at him from a different angle. I can actually see the real person that he was inside, and he actually was one of the better elders. But that Watchtower Society really messed with his mind. In fact, I could go into a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses like the one that I was in before I left. I would be so happy to see those people. I would love to give a lot of them a hug and just let them know that, I love them. I love all these people. In fact, I have a friend. He taught me drywall. I'm a drywall taper. He taught me my entire trade. We became very good friends. As soon as I left the valley, I moved to Western Washington because my wife at that time, I'm in a second marriage now, but my wife at that time, she had a friend over here that knew this trade, and so we ended up over here, and I learned the trade, and him and I became the best of friends. I loved that guy. That guy had a unique personality, and I still love him today. He's a wonderful guy. We had some really good conversations all of the time. We would say things that many times you couldn't just talk to anybody about in the organization because people didn't want to hear a lot of your feelings. So, and I really like that guy. In fact, I would love to see him today, but I haven't seen him in many years, and we'll talk about why that's the case later. But do I hate him? Of course not. I don't hate anyone. You really begin to pity these people like you never have before. You pity them, and you wish you could go back and share with them some of the wonderful things you've learned, the things that have freed you from the Watchtower Society, and why your life has really come together. So everything that Jehovah's Witnesses have been taught about these people that leave the organization, all that's a lie. Yes, you are angry when you leave the Watchtower Society, but that anger is caused from sadness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the trauma of leaving the Watchtower Society. It's a very complex subject. So those are my feelings about, how you feel about former believers. Again, you hate the Watchtower Society Corporation, but it's all right to hate a dead body, okay? But you should never hate the people that you left. You need to pity them because so many of them are sincere, even if they are not, completely sincere about serving God. But they might be decent people within, and you do love them and you do care about them. And I was just now going to talk about my mother, but I'll talk about her a little bit later and what has resulted from me leaving the Watchtower Society. But for now, let's just leave it at that. We're almost at the 15-minute mark, and we're going to go back and forth on this subject. This subject's a very important one, and I feel it's something that needs to be readdressed later, but you're going to hear me say that a lot. You're going to hear me say, oh, we're going to talk about that later. You're going to hear me say, again, we're addressing this subject because, as I said, every line I make, every statement I make, there's a volume of information that could be shared. All right, well, we'll leave it at that, and be sure to watch my next video. And I won't tell you what that's about this time because who knows what it's going to be about, because none of this is scripted. None of this was actually pre-planned. I just have one thought, I give the title, and then everything else is just from the heart. So that's why, you'll hear me mess up on words and all of this, because these videos are unedited. All right, we'll see you next time.